But this next segment, this next conversation we're having is one that I really have been looking forward to for a while. We've got Matt Lawrence on from AVID. Matt, you've got an incredible history, not only on the side of AVID from a hardware manufacturer to software developer side, but as an end user, which is a perspective that we don't hear enough of as a community. But you've also had the chance to tour with some incredible artists, tell some amazing stories. So let's start there, Matt. If you had 2 minutes of an elevator pitch to say, here's my story, lay it out, we want to hear it.
Lay it out, we want to hear it. All right, so I started conventional in a Hells Angels club.
As people do, yes.
No, it was I played in bands, and at 18 realized that the guy that was in the practice area of my band, I always wanted to change things and tune things, and then we played a show, and that show happened to be in a Hells Angels club. And I thought, wow, these guys have a soundboard that's behind a chain link fence, and it smells crazy in here. And I thought, this is my life. This is what I want. And I look back now and think that's crazy. But you know, it was a little Mackie desk behind the fence, and I said, I want to do this, and the guy said, no, you don't. And eventually, I got him convinced to let me pick up the trash. And I did that for a couple years, and then moved to a 500 capacity club. Learned more about the amps and the speakers, and I'm thinking to myself, it was like point source EAW, you know, something in the early 2000s, I guess it would be now. And then one of my favorite bands came through. They were called Strung Out, an old punk band. I used to skateboard too. Said, hey, do you want to go on tour? And I said yes. And they said, well, we didn't tell you how much. Couldn't tell you how much. I said, I don't care. I just, yes, I'm in.
In travel.
So literally, I toured the world with my favorite band in a van, and we toured, you know, Australia and Japan and everywhere else. So it was indoctrination of my favorite band, right? And then I started getting into. Let's see, it was a little bit bigger bands, eventually mix in Lauryn Hill and Snoop Dogg and Fifth Harmony, Jimmy World, some other stuff. So it started getting me a platform to get into bigger PAs and bigger soundboards and more expensive soundboards and stuff like that. And I really realized that I love the soundboard. That's kind of where I'm at. And even when I was on tour, if it was a soundboard that somebody didn't know, I was always like, hey, let me show you what's going on. And so I had an opportunity back in my club days to do some interns and some training where, with people that were coming through. And so I always had this, I want to show people what I'm using, right? And then I eventually started mixing, back then it was profiles and SC48s, Digidesign stuff, into AVID. And then there was a time where I was able to go with the D-Live from Allen & Heath. And it worked great. And then there was a guy named Tim Schaefer who took me off the road and said, hey, do you want to become a sales manager? And I said, no, that doesn't make sense to me.
You don't want healthcare?
Well, So eventually he took me off the road and taught me some spreadsheets and some emails and kind of how to do things. And then an opportunity came to work for AVID. And I've been there for a little over 3 years now as the national sales manager of integration for the live sound division. So was that 2 minutes?
I don't know. It was good though. I was very comprehensive.
We were engaged. So just because I'm a big musician, or I used to sing, not very well, but
alto,
soprano.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So sometimes at dinners with colleagues, they hear a little here and there. But what was one of your favorite artists that you had worked with? And if you could share just a fun story of maybe an audio nightmare that you fixed.
Well, I toured for a good part of. I've been a sound engineer for a little over 22 years, but I toured for 18 of them or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, there's stories of behind the desk and why, and then there's stories of, oh my gosh, I can't believe we were able to pull this off, right? And one of the stories that I love, Lauryn Hill is a very interesting artist. We'll call it PC to work with. No, she's always late. There's just a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I will never forget the time when I was called to her dressing room and she said, I'm eccentric, right? And I said, yeah, well, I've seen that you're eccentric. That makes sense. And she said, well, I need all of the effects. And I said, all of the effects, okay. So I had about 6 engines, right? 6 effects engines of slap, delay, reverb, plate, all the things, literally just for her vocal. And there was a time when we would go into this pavilion and we'd go somewhere and she would start holding out a note, right? She would start just, beautiful voice.
Gorgeous, yeah.
All the things you hear about her, to each their own, but she is a great singer, right? Just amazing. And so she would have a 16-piece band where she would calm everybody down and everybody would stop playing. And she would just hold out a note and I would, pull up my effects, and it was just her and I. I'm literally getting goosebumps talking about it. It was just her and I talking, or she was singing and I was doing sound, and it was just her and I in the middle of an arena or a stadium or wherever we were at. And it was that moment where a sound engineer is doing what he's supposed to be doing, right? So that kind of stuff is what I think you tour for, right? And so that's one. And then, everybody asks, what was your favorite band to tour with? As I mentioned, I toured with my favorite band.
Yeah.
And it was small enough where we're sharing a van and, sharing hotel rooms and stuff like that with your favorite band. So that, you can't beat that.
You can't beat that. Wow.
Matt, one of the things, especially when you think about points of entry into the industry, is through live sound, right? Whether that's hobbyist, whether that's volunteering at a church, theater, wherever. So many people want to have those stories and they say, I want to go mix with Lauryn Hill or my favorite band, but they don't know how to get there. Yeah. But one of the beautiful things and one of the things I appreciate about you is we now have access to have conversations we couldn't have 20 years ago. Absolutely. What are some of the ways that you're seeing people not only gain access in the industry and learn and comprehend, but also people like you, how you can kind of reach down and help pull some of those people out?
Yeah, it was interesting. So obviously how I got into it is not conventional. And as I was able to be at the second club that I was at, I was watching people come to me for their intern hours, right? And so it was interesting of, okay, then you can come to me, that's fine. And teaching them what I knew and how I knew it. And I remember some of my interns coming back to me and saying, do you remember late at night after a show, you would grab a drumstick and a snare drum and a microphone and you'd start hitting it and you'd turn the frequency, right? And then just, do you hear that? Do you hear that? So I don't know if there's I wouldn't say my teaching methods are conventional, but some of them are super successful. Some of them are out doing arenas and stadiums and setting up for ballparks as an integrator. So whatever worked, but I think it's back to the passion, right? I love sound, period, and I have tools that make me enable me to run sound, right? And I think it's being able to have the platform, and Ben and you and I were talking earlier. I volunteer at my church, right? So I have a church where on Sundays I go work at, and this church happens to have 3 S6Ls, right? Which is what I sell. That's what I do for a living. And so I know these desks inside and out, I hope, anyway. But there's 3 desks tied together, but it enables me to have 3 soundboards with multiple engineers, multiple volunteers that I can be able to train every week. So we have rehearsals on Tuesday, and then we have 2 services on Sunday. So I'm the only one who gets paid. And so we have volunteers from 12 to 65. Engineers who are just aspiring to do stuff, and we have engineers who are in the analog world coming back to digital, right? Or going to digital, if you will. Coming back to sound, that's what I was looking for. So the idea that I can take the moment to express how digital works, or how does a 4-band work, or how does a dynamic work. So yeah, being able to train and have the appropriate gear in the safe space to do it, right? Every church, if you say, hey, I want to come in and learn, they're not going to turn you away. And they're not going to shove religion down your throat, right? It's the idea that a space where you can come and learn about something that you're inspired to do.
Well, Matt, last question here. When you think about the skill sets of people that are aging into the industry, they're far more advanced from a technical perspective than we were, right? Understanding not only concepts like EQ, learning through their DAWs or GarageBand or whatever, but also even on the video side, right? Understanding lighting best practices, rule of thirds. But what are some of those hard skills that you would say to those people listening today that say, hey, maybe it's over-undering a cable, but you need to learn these 4 or 5 things. It's great if you have the technical knowledge, but you've got to have some of these things to bring with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of how it's grassroots and being able to hands-on, right? And I think that there's do I dare say driving a video game, or driving in a video game and actually driving? It's kind of the same concept, right? Being there, being able to go, hear what feedback is like. You can read about feedback all day long, but until you hear a mic hit a speaker and hear the squelch, you're not going to understand what feedback is, right? So there's a few things, being able to be around when the signal flow is there, being able to actually see where a sub-snake goes from here to here, the things that I teach, and I think the idea of going through those practices. What does gain structure look like? What is high pass filter? What does it actually do though? Can you hear it? Not read about it, but hear it. If you take a high pass and you go all the way up to 1K, you're not going to get much out of that microphone, right? But why do you use it? Those kind of things.
Matt Lawrence, always great to have you on the show. We appreciate you joining us. Have a great rest of your InfoComm show.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.